Hello everyone. Today, I'll introduce you to Jonas Salk, the brilliant scientist who developed the polio vaccine, saving millions of lives worldwide. Born into a poor immigrant family, Salk rose to prominence through his passion for science. In 1955, he introduced the polio vaccine, effectively eliminating this terrifying disease. Remarkably, he refused to patent it, believing that science should serve humanity. But he didn't stop there. Salk continued researching other diseases and founded the Salk Institute, a world-class research center. Though he has passed away, his legacy lives on as a testament to intelligence, humanity, and unwavering dedication. Childhood and the motivation to pursue science. Jonas Salk was born into a Jewish immigrant family in New York City. His parents were not renowned scientists or doctors. They were simply hardworking individuals who wanted a better life for their children. From an early age, Salk stood out from his peers. While other children were engrossed in games, he spent hours in the library, immersing himself in subjects ranging from science and history to literature. Unlike many great scientists, Jonas Salk did not initially aspire to become a doctor or researcher. He was simply a curious child, constantly questioning the world around him. However, as he grew older, he became increasingly aware of a harsh reality. Disease was one of humanity's greatest enemies. He witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of the 1918 influenza pandemic, which claimed millions of lives worldwide. This left a deep impression on young Salk and sparked his desire to find ways to prevent such tragedies. Upon entering university, Salk did not initially choose medicine, but pursued biology out of a passion for research. Over time, however, he realized that science was not just about satisfying curiosity, it had the power to change the fate of millions. He decided to study medicine, not to become a practicing physician, but to follow a less conventional path, researching and developing vaccines to combat diseases. Salk held a unique philosophy. He did not want to merely treat individual patients, but sought to prevent diseases from occurring in the first place, protecting entire communities. This perspective contrasted with the prevailing approach of many doctors at the time, who focused more on treatment than prevention. Yet, it was precisely this difference in thinking that laid the foundation for one of the greatest achievements in medical history. The fight against polio, the greatest battle of his life. By the mid-20th century, polio was a global nightmare, especially in the United States. The disease primarily targeted children, causing permanent paralysis and even death. Haunting images of hospitals filled with young patients confined to iron lungs, a mechanical respirator used to help those whose breathing muscles had been paralyzed, became a terrifying symbol of the era. Each year, tens of thousands of children were infected, and no one knew the exact cause or how to effectively prevent it. Polio outbreaks were particularly severe in the 1940s and early 1950s. During the summer, when the virus spread most aggressively, parents lived in constant fear. They forbade their children from swimming, playing in public spaces, or even interacting with other kids, as the mode of transmission remained a mystery. One of the most well-known victims of polio was Franklin D. Roosevelt, then President of the United States. Although he never publicly admitted it, Roosevelt became paralyzed from the waist down after contracting the disease at the age of 39. This personal struggle led him to establish the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, NFIP, later known as the March of Dimes, to fund research and vaccine development. A challenging journey. Jonas Salk entered the battle against polio in 1947 when he received funding from the NFIP. At the time, he was just a young researcher working at the University of Pittsburgh, with no major reputation or influence. However, he possessed something far more valuable: unwavering determination and a revolutionary mindset. While many scientists focused on developing a polio vaccine using live attenuated viruses, a widely accepted approach, Salk had a different idea. He believed that an inactivated vaccine using a killed virus to trigger an immune response without posing a risk could be just as effective. This concept was highly controversial, as most successful vaccines at the time, such as the smallpox vaccine, were based on weakened live viruses. Salk and his team worked tirelessly to develop the vaccine. They first tested it on animals and then, in a bold move, on themselves, including Salk, his wife, and their children, demonstrating absolute confidence in their work. But the challenges extended beyond the laboratory. Salk faced fierce opposition from prominent scientists who argued that his approach was ineffective or even dangerous. Some colleagues accused him of taking shortcuts, insisting that only a live virus vaccine could provide long-term immunity. The largest human trial in history. Despite skepticism, by the early 1950s, Salk's research showed promising results. He decided to move forward with what would become the largest vaccine trial in history. In 1954, with the support of the NFIP, Salk's polio vaccine was tested on 1.8 million children across the United States, Canada, and Finland. This massive undertaking involved tens of thousands of doctors, nurses, and volunteers. The children participating in the trial were called polio pioneers, and they became the embodiment of hope for the entire world. The trial followed a double-blind method. One group received the actual vaccine, while the other received a placebo. Millions of parents anxiously awaited the results. A failure could not only endanger countless children, but also destroy Salk's career and crush the world's hope of eradicating polio. A triumph for science. On April 12, 1955, a date that would go down in history, the results were announced. Salk's vaccine was nearly 90% effective in preventing polio. The entire nation erupted in celebration. Church bells rang, people flooded the streets in joy, and newspapers hailed it as one of the greatest days in medical history. Overnight, Jonas Salk went from an obscure researcher to a global hero. However, what truly cemented his legacy was not just his scientific achievement, but his humanitarian spirit. When asked about patenting the vaccine, Salk responded with a simple yet profound statement. "The people own it. Could you patent the sun?" This selfless act ensured that the vaccine was freely available, removing profit barriers that could have slowed its distribution. If Salk had patented his vaccine, he could have made billions. But instead, he chose to save millions of children from polio at no cost to them. Following the widespread vaccination campaign, polio was nearly eradicated in many countries, and global infection rates plummeted. In the years that followed, another scientist, Albert Sabin, developed an oral polio vaccine using a weakened live virus, making immunization even more accessible. However, without Salk's groundbreaking work, humanity might have taken decades longer to defeat this devastating disease. More than a scientist, Jonas Salk was not just a brilliant researcher. He was a visionary far ahead of his time. He cared little for personal fame or fortune. His only goal was to serve humanity. His success proved that science is not just about numbers and laboratory experiments, but also about compassion and social responsibility. Salk's polio vaccine not only saved millions of lives, but also transformed the way people viewed preventive medicine. His story serves as a powerful reminder that one person, armed with determination and a bold vision, can change the course of history for all of humankind. A great success and a decision that won the world's admiration. When Jonas Salk announced the polio vaccine in 1955, he not only defeated a terrifying disease, but also completely changed the way humanity viewed preventive medicine. His success was not just a milestone in science, but also a triumph of humanity, earning the admiration of the entire world. A day that changed history. On April 12, 1955, the entire United States and many other countries held their breath, waiting for the results of the polio vaccine trials. When the news broke that Salk's vaccine was 90% effective, celebrations erupted everywhere. Major newspapers like the New York Times ran headlines in bold, "Victory over polio. Salk's vaccine proves effective." Schools held celebrations, church bells rang in joy, and millions of parents breathed a sigh of relief. They knew that their children would no longer have to live in fear every summer, the peak season when polio outbreaks were at their worst. Numerous countries immediately launched nationwide vaccination campaigns. The US government quickly ramped up mass production of the vaccine, and within just a few years, polio cases in the country dropped to nearly zero. But what truly made Jonas Salk a global icon was not just his invention, it was the way he handled his success. A quote that defined a legend. When a reporter asked Salk if he would patent the vaccine, he simply smiled and replied, "The people own it. Could you patent the sun?" This was more than just a simple statement. It was a declaration of his philosophy. Salk believed that science should serve humanity, not profit. Had he patented the vaccine, it could have become a commercial product, making it harder for poorer nations to access. But he refused to let that happen. Salk's decision was a stark contrast to the pharmaceutical industry at the time, where major discoveries were often patented for massive profits. Some experts estimate that if Salk had patented the vaccine, he could have made over $7 billion in today's value. But he didn't care about money or fame. He only cared about saving as many lives as possible. Recognition and praise from around the world. Following the vaccine's success, Jonas Salk became one of the most famous figures in the world. He was honored by U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower at the White House, where the president, visibly moved, shook his hand and said, "From the bottom of our hearts, the American people thank you." Despite his groundbreaking work, Salk never received the Nobel Prize, which sparked debate in the scientific community. Some argued that because he had not published his findings through traditional academic channels, scientific journals before public announcements, he was not eligible. But to the public, he didn't need a prize to prove his greatness. Millions of children saved from polio were proof enough. In fact, many Americans campaigned for Salk's face to appear on U.S. currency, or for a statue of him to be erected in Washington, D.C. Though he never sought fame, his name was forever etched into medical history. A global impact. The success of the polio vaccine extended far beyond the United States. Countries across Europe, Asia, and Africa quickly launched vaccination programs. Poorer nations, where polio was still rampant, were able to access the vaccine thanks to Salk's decision not to patent it. Even the Soviet Union, despite being in the midst of the Cold War with the US, decided to cooperate in producing the vaccine and vaccinating millions of children. This proved that science could transcend political boundaries, when the goal was to save lives. The legacy of Jonas Salk. More than just a scientist. Although Jonas Salk became a legend with his polio vaccine, he did not stop there. For the rest of his life, he continued to dedicate himself to science, medicine, and humanity in various ways. From researching vaccines for other diseases to establishing a world-class research institute, he never saw his achievements as the final destination. Salk Institute, a place that nurtures great minds. After the success of the polio vaccine, Jonas Salk did not choose a life of wealth or fame. Instead, he focused on building a long-lasting scientific legacy. The Salk Institute for Biological Studies, founded in 1960 in La Jolla, California. The Salk Institute was not just an ordinary laboratory, but an advanced scientific hub, bringing together some of the greatest minds across various fields: biology, medicine, chemistry, and even philosophy. Salk believed that the most significant discoveries happened at the intersection of different disciplines, where brilliant minds could collaborate and exchange ideas in a free and creative environment. He was also deeply invested in the design of the institute. He partnered with renowned architect Louis Kahn to create a structure that was both minimalist and inspiring, featuring open spaces, natural light, and breathtaking views of the Pacific Ocean. Today, the Salk Institute remains one of the world's leading research centers, contributing to breakthroughs in neuroscience, genetics, cancer research, and aging studies. Efforts in fighting other diseases. After defeating polio, Salk continued his battle against other deadly diseases. He was particularly interested in influenza, a virus that had claimed millions of lives in the 1918 pandemic, a memory that never faded from his mind. He worked to develop more effective flu vaccines and studied how viruses evolved to predict and prevent future outbreaks. In the 1980s, when the AIDS pandemic emerged and terrified the world, Salk also joined the fight, researching a vaccine for HIV. Although he did not find a complete solution, his contributions paved the way for later studies. Once again, he proved that his passion for science never faded, even in his 70s. A life of endless curiosity. Beyond science, Jonas Salk was also fascinated by philosophy and humanity's future. He wrote several books, including The Survival of the Wisest, where he explored how humans should live and evolve in the modern world. He did not just want to cure diseases. He wanted to inspire people to think about their responsibilities towards society and the planet. Throughout his life, he remained humble and simple. Despite being one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century, he never saw himself as a savior, but merely as someone trying to make the world a better place. A timeless legacy. Jonas Salk passed away in 1995, but his legacy continues to live on. What he left behind was not just a vaccine, a research institute, or books, but also an inspiring example of dedication, humanity, and the belief that science should serve people above all else. Today, thanks to his efforts and those who followed in his footsteps, polio has been nearly eradicated worldwide. Millions of children are saved every year, and vaccines remain one of the most powerful tools in medicine's fight against diseases. Every time a child receives a polio vaccine, it is not just a simple shot. It is a reminder of a man who dedicated his life to protecting humanity's health. Jonas Salk was not just a scientist, he was a symbol of the idea that one person can change the world.